subject, because President Trump tomorrow has a very important meeting with Prime Minister Starmer of the United Kingdom. This is the Indian Ocean. You've heard me talk about this. A group of islands right here are called the Chagos Islands. This is China over here. Down here is another group of islands called Mauritius that I'll talk about in a second. Why do I talk about the Chagos Islands? Well, the Chagos Islands from 1715 to 1810, the Chagos Islands were owned by France. And in 1814, France gave the Chagos Islands to the United Kingdom. And at the time, the United Kingdom, after France gave the islands to them, not only owned the Chagos Islands, but the United Kingdom also owned Mauritius. And the United Kingdom administered both the Chagos Islands and Mauritius from headquarters in Mauritius. Mauritius never owned the Chagos Islands. Never. They were always owned either by France or by the United Kingdom, which owns them today. The only connection that Mauritius had to the Chagos Islands was that the United Kingdom owned both at the same time and administered the two groups of islands from headquarters in Mauritius. Now, after the United Kingdom acquired the Chagos Islands here, the United States of America built one of the most important military bases in the world on one of the islands there called Diego Garcia. Hugely important. The United Kingdom helped us, but we put up most of the money. Now, Mr. Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, has decided that he wants to give the Chagos Islands with our military base to Mauritius. Wants to give it to them. And we said, wait a minute, we've got a military base here. What about our military base? And Mr. Starmer says, well, I'm going to give all of the islands, including the military base, to Mauritius, even though Mauritius never owned them. And we're going to pay, now that Mauritius owns them, we're going to pay Mauritius $9 billion over time. I want to be fair, over time, for a military base that we built. What? Why? Well, I'll tell you why. Prime Minister Starmer feels guilty because the United Nations, actually, it's not the United Nations, rather. It's a group called the International Court of Justice, which is loosely affiliated with the United Nations, issued a ruling that criticized the United Kingdom for actually owning the Chagos Islands. They said, United Kingdom, you're an anti-colonialist, you should feel guilty, you should feel bad, and you need to give the Chagos Islands away. You need to give them to Mauritius, even though Mauritius never owned them. That's what's going on. That's all that's going on. Now, how did this get started? The Prime Minister of Mauritius, his name was Prime Minister Chagos. He sued in the International Court of Justice. He sued the United Kingdom, said, give me Mauritius and the military base. He filed a lawsuit. And the International Court of Justice is based in Netherlands, issued a ruling in Mauritius's favor. It's an advisory opinion. It's not binding on anybody. But Mr. Chagos got what he wanted on behalf of Mauritius. A few weeks later, Prime Minister Chagos got beat. And he was replaced by a new prime minister, whose name is Prime Minister Ramgoolam. Prime Minister Ramgoolam said, not only do I want the Mauritius Islands, but you're not paying us enough, United Kingdom and America. According to news reports, he wants not only 9 billion pounds, he wants 18 billion pounds for our own military base. And he said, we will lease you the base that you built, which we, Mauritius, now own, back to you. But you got to give us between 9 and 18 billion dollars. Isn't that special? Isn't that special? That's what's going on. Now, there's one other thing you need to know. Mauritius is very close to China. Mauritius has a very lucrative trade agreement with China. And you'll not be surprised to learn that after all this has been developing, China all of a sudden is Mauritius' best friend. You know why? Because if Prime Minister Starmer does this, Mauritius is going to own the base. They're going to own the base. Now, Prime Minister Starmer is going to meet with President Trump tomorrow to try to talk President Trump into agreeing to this. The Prime Minister of the UK has already said if President Trump is not comfortable with me giving away an American military base, I want to giggle when I say that, if President Trump's not comfortable, I won't do it. And here's what the Prime Minister is going to tell President Trump tomorrow. He's going to say, number one, Mr. President, we need to do this because it's the right thing to do. The United Nations International Court of Justice, which is comprised of a bunch of weenie wokers, has issued an advisory opinion saying that we in the United Kingdom should feel guilty because we used to own colonies. And Prime Minister Starmer is going to say, Mr. President, we need to give these islands away in your military base, Mr. President, because it's the right thing to do. The second thing he's going to tell Mr. President is if we don't do it, China's going to get really mad. He's going to say China's going to get really mad if we don't do this. And the third thing he's going to tell the president is that if we don't do this, the United Nations could cut off the telecommunications for our military base. Like the United Nations is going to all of a sudden, out of the blue, cut off the spectrum and the telecommunications for an American military base. They have no jurisdiction to do that, and they also don't have the oranges to do that. There's one other thing I'm going to mention. I didn't mean to go over this long, but this is an important meeting the president's having. Remember I told you about the prime minister who started all this, Prime Minister Chagos. He got beat, you'll recall me saying, in 2024. A few weeks ago, former Prime Minister Chagos was arrested. Yep. He was arrested for money laundering. The Mauritius authorities searched his house and the home of one of his closest associates. And you know what they found? They found $25 million in cash in various currencies. They found Rolex watches. They found Cartier watches. And they found United Kingdom visas. I'm not saying that they're connected, but it's mighty interesting. Here's what one of the generals who formerly worked for President Trump has said about this deal that stinks to high heaven. General Herbert McMaster. Quote, the general said, Mr. President, it would put us, the United States, at a significant strategic disadvantage, especially at a time when China is trying to gain control of critical terrain and choke points around the world in this effort to create new spheres of influence. So, to President Trump, my president, tonight, I say, don't do it, Mr. President. Please don't do it. I don't care what Prime Minister Starmer promises you. The only reason he's doing this is because he feels guilty because the United Nations has said that the United Kingdom should be ashamed of its history and ashamed that that it one time owned colonies. The people of the United Kingdom can feel what they want. That's none of my business. But we got an American military base here, and it's very important to defend the Indian Ocean against China. Please, Mr. President, please, President Trump, don't let Prime Minister Starmer talk you into giving away an American military base that we need to combat China to another country that never owned it, just because Prime Minister Starmer feels guilty. I'm sorry he feels guilty. He needs to go buy an emotional support pony, but he doesn't need to give away an American military base. And Mr. Trump, President Trump, please don't agree to this. That's it, Mr. President. I'm out of gas. My work here is done. Tony wants me to read something, Mr. President. I'm sorry you had to stay so long, but this is important. This meeting with Prime Minister Starmer is tomorrow. I don't want to lose a military base we need. So, I appreciate your indulgence. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate resume legislative session and be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the appointments of the desk appear separately in the record as if made by the chair.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the consideration of S-Res 97, which was submitted earlier today.
The clerk will report.
Senate Resolution 97, honoring the life of Nebraska community leader Howard L. Hawks.
Without objection, the Senate will proceed.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the consideration of S-Res Senate Resolution 96, which was submitted earlier today.
The clerk will report.
Senate Resolution 96, designating the week of February 24th through February